According to a recent poll taken by CNBC last quarter, 65% of Americans state that they struggle with living paycheck to paycheck. Now, what does paycheck to paycheck actually mean? It's not to be confused with the paycheck to paycheck budgeting method. That's totally separate. Living paycheck to paycheck means that you struggle in between the periods that you get paid with your living expenses and you don't have enough money to cover you in between those pay periods. So you feel as if you don't have enough money to make it, you're having to borrow money, you're just struggling to make ends meet. In today's video, I'd like to discuss 5 tips to help you stop living paycheck to paycheck. Now, with that being said, in order to make anything work, we have to make sure that we have discipline, we have consistency, and we have a shift in mindset in order to make these 5 tips work. And with that being said, let's get into tip number 1 right now. How many of you are guilty of trying to do your budget up here? How many of you are guilty of trying to calculate your expenses, how much you're going to get paid, what you got to pay out, and you try to do it all up here? That's called mental accounting. And that's the first tip in helping us to stop living paycheck to paycheck. We can't try to do those calculations mentally up in our head. We've got to write them down. And one way it's going to help you is you got to keep up with a budget. You've got to write those numbers down so you can physically see them. Now, that's not to say some people are very great with mental accounting. Maybe they've gotten to a place where they're all set. But for those of us struggling to live paycheck to paycheck, writing those numbers down and seeing what's coming in and what's going out every month or every 2 weeks is going to help us get an idea of what we need to do to stop living paycheck to paycheck. You can't try to do it up in your head because we can't retain and remember everything that may be happening. You may have something that happens unexpectedly that you weren't planning for, but you didn't write it down. So now something got missed because of that unexpected expense. So tip number 1 to help you stop living paycheck to paycheck is stop with the mental accounting. Get yourself a budget, write it down consistently every time you get paid, and look at the big picture of what's coming in and what's going out. And if you need a free budget worksheet, click the link in my description box below, go to the freebie section of my website, and print off a budget worksheet to help you get started today. Tip number 2 is a big one. Tip number 2 is something we can all benefit from. It doesn't even have to be to stop living paycheck to paycheck. We've got to look at ways to cut back on our monthly expenses. So I'm going to challenge you. Once you write down that budget, I want you to write down all of your monthly expenses that you pay out every month, every single one of them, from your rent or mortgage to your utilities, all the way down to those subscriptions that we pay for on a monthly basis. And then I want you to take a good look at where you can cut costs, especially when it comes to those monthly subscriptions. Are you using them? Do you need them? That's the key thing there. So when we're trying to stop living paycheck to paycheck, we've got to analyze our expenses. What are we paying out every month, and is it necessary? I can tell you, one of my number 1 issues is that I pay for Netflix and Hulu consistently every month. Do I watch them? No. Why do I do it? I don't know. This is why we have to take a look at the bigger picture. Where can we cut those expenses? I'm sure if I cut that Hulu and that Netflix, that would be $17, about $25, almost $30 a month. Carry the 1 times 12, that's $360 a year. So I challenge you, look at your monthly expenses, write them all down, and put them into buckets. Prioritize them by importance and take a look and see how much money you could be saving if you cut back on those expenses and how much it would help you. Tip number 3, live below your means. So many times, and this is just an ongoing issue in America in general. So many times we are living above our means. We're living above our pay grade, where we have brand new cars with high car payments, but we don't even make enough to pay for that car payment. Or we have high mortgages where we can't afford that mortgage. We may have been able to afford it when we first got it. Maybe we had some extra money coming in with a bonus. But when you look down the road, can we really afford that? So tip number 3 is we got to live below our means. What do we actually need to get by on the income that we bring in, so that we're not struggling? So what we need to do is take a look at that brand new 2024 car. Did we need that? Was that necessary, or could we have bought a used car and made it through? So that's why we need to take a closer look at what we're bringing in. Now, if that's something you want to have, that is a high priority on your wish list, then you need to make it happen. You need to think about other sources of income to make sure you can pay for that. And it has to be feasible for your day-to-day life. You can't struggle to do it just because you want a new car, because now you're living above your means. We have to be realistic when it comes to our finances. We have to do what works for us, and we can't try to keep up with everyone else. We can get there. We can get there if by planning, we can definitely get to a place where we can have those nice things. But in the moment, we have to make sure we're living below our means and we're not having more money go out than what's coming in. Before we move into our final 2 tips on how to stop living paycheck to paycheck, let me know in the comment section your thoughts about this topic, and also drop in the comment section if you are one of the people that's struggling with living paycheck to paycheck. Hopefully these tips will help you. And if you want more budgeting tips like this, please make sure you hit that subscribe button and also hit that like button if you're enjoying this topic. And now let's move into tip number 4. Tip number 4 that's going to help us stop living paycheck to paycheck is try to use cash. When's the last time you used cash for your budget? So what I mean by using cash is challenge yourself when you create that budget and you see how much money you have to last you in between pay periods. Take that money out in cash and allocate a budget for different categories that you know you'll need for the next couple weeks, and see if you can remain in that budget of how much cash you took out. So for example, take out what you would normally spend on groceries. Take it out in cash instead of on your card. Because when you have it in cash, studies show that our brain tends to think about spending money quite differently when we have cash as opposed to a card. When you have a card, you know it's there, you can swipe, you don't worry about it, you don't think about a budget because you know you can swipe and it'll be covered. But when you have a certain amount of cash on hand and you know that's all you can do, see, that's a mind trick. That will trick you. That will trick your mind into saying, okay, I only have $40. I can't go over this budget. That's how cash helps. And sometimes we need those tricks with our mind to help us stay within budget. So I challenge you, over the next couple of months, take out that budget in cash. And in between your next couple of pay periods, use that cash and let yourself know this is all I have, this is all we're working with, and see how you do. You will find out very quickly when you have to use cash and you know that's all you have, you're going to think twice about buying that extra thing that you know you didn't need. And when you have cash and tell yourself, this is all I can spend, watch and see how your mind thinks differently, and it's going to save you a lot of money. Tip number 5 is a very, very important tip, that it doesn't matter if you're living paycheck to paycheck or not. We should be doing this anyway. And tip number 5 is, if you want to stop living paycheck to paycheck, start thinking about your future self. Think about the future you. What is it that you want? What is it that you're hoping to accomplish financially? You know, so many times we forget to plan for the future, and we're so busy looking down, living in the day-to-day. You know, we got to get through this day, we got to get through this day, that we forget that we've got to plan ahead. We've got to plan for the future. So I want to challenge you with thinking, where do you see yourself 10, 15, 20 years from now? If it's to stop living paycheck to paycheck, then I want you to write that down. Where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself in a space where you don't even have to worry about the next time you get paid because you're already financially set? Do you see yourself having a home in that period of time? Do you see yourself going back to school? Write these things down and then map out a plan on how to get there. And when you have that written down, you have goals set. And goals motivate you to stop the actions that you're currently doing. Goals motivate you to try and figure out, how am I going to get from point A to point B? So we've got to start thinking about our future self and stop living in the now. So there you have it, my 5 tips on how to help you stop living paycheck to paycheck. And remember, with anything, you guys, it's going to take those 3 actions that I told you in the beginning of the video. It's going to take discipline, it's going to take consistency, and it's definitely going to take a shift in mindset to help us get out of that paycheck to paycheck struggle that we're fighting. But I know you can do it. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. Again, if you want more budgeting tips like this, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate you guys being here. And guess what? I will see you back next week. Bye.